Pakistan's Prime Minister makes an absolutely cringeworthy speech at the United Nations. We go through this sort of, this fencing match between our countries at the United Nations every year. That in itself is not new. But for Shehbaz Sharif to actually stand up and say that, Trump, to reiterate the Nobel Prize, to talk about how Trump not intervened in Operation Sindoor, there would have been a catastrophe, and as happens every year, a very fine young diplomat gets up, shuts him down, says Pakistan's military actually pleaded for a cessation in hostilities. This India-Pakistan face-off, suddenly it feels like the Americans are in the middle of it and have inserted themselves in the middle of it, and there seems to be nothing we can do about it overtly except for saying we do not accept third-party mediation. How do you read it?
So I think building on what Rakesh had said, I very briefly try and elaborate on why the US-Pakistan relationship seems at a good place now, and why are we getting a sense that the US-India relationship is at a difficult place. Now, in terms of the US-Pakistan, first we have to always keep in mind that US relationship with Pakistan will be based on US perception of its own interest. Not because they want to help India or create challenges for India, it's how they define that interest. Even at times when the relationship was very difficult, because they felt that Pakistan was helping the Taliban, which was killing US soldiers, they still felt they needed to have a relationship with Pakistan for two main reasons. One, Pakistan is a country which has a large number of nuclear weapons. So they want access to the leadership of the country that has a large number of nuclear weapons. Second, large part of terrorism-related challenge to the West, including the US, is sourced from the Afghanistan-Pakistan region. So they again want access to the leadership of the country that can deal with this region. And then even now, although they have withdrawn from Afghanistan, they fly drones over Afghanistan every now and then. And the drones can reach Afghanistan only by flying over Pakistan, can't go over Iran. So they need access to the leadership of Pakistan. So that's in the general sense. Now, at this particular moment, additional dimensions have come in. Rakesh also mentioned that Trump is very, very transactional. So, and many people have pointed out that much of his policy is driven by what is benefiting him, his organization, the family. And so the Pakistanis have invested some money in the World Liberty Financial, with the cryptocurrency firm run by Eric Trump and Zach Witkoff, who is the son of Steve Witkoff, who is the special envoy of Donald Trump. So that has got them some access in the Trump circuit. And there are many other reports which are out there in public domain where there is a Pakistan linkage to some of the businesses being run out of the Trump organization. So we have to keep that dimension in mind. So because of that, at this stage, the relationship is very different from what we had seen in the first Trump term. In the first term, if you recall, in July 2017, Trump had come out with a South Asia strategy and basically saying that Pakistan has been hoodwinking the US, you have to take strong action, India do more in Afghanistan. And 1st January 2018, he had tweeted at 3 a.m., stop all aid to Pakistan. And then in July 2019, because then he needed Pakistan's help to try and get an agreement with the Taliban, because he had to withdraw. July 2019, he invites Imran Khan to the White House and says, in response to a planted question, that I'm ready to mediate on Kashmir. And he went on to say that the Indian Prime Minister has asked me to mediate on Kashmir, which simply can't be true. And the Indian Foreign Minister had to make a statement that there's no truth to what the President has said. So we have to keep in mind that President Trump's articulation of position of policy is not necessarily always based on facts. So that's one dimension. Now, in that background, when we look at the problems in the US-India relationship, at the moment, we are in a problematic situation because 4 elements of President Trump's domestic politics or personal politics, not because of any structural issue between US and India. First, as Rakesh mentioned, he wants the Nobel Peace Prize. And he believes that making a claim to resolving the India-Pakistan crisis of conflict in May, would enhance his claim to the Nobel Peace Prize. And the Pakistanis have realized that this works very well. So they have nominated him, and then Shehbaz Sharif talks about it also, gets him special access in the White House. So they will play that because Pakistan has always tried to involve a third party in India-Pakistan issues. And India's position has been very clear, especially since 1972, since the Simla Agreement, that we will never accept a third party role in India-Pakistan issues, because in the 50s and 60s, the third party did play a role. US and UK did mediate between India and Pakistan, including on Kashmir, and we found that the mediation was biased because they were looking at issues from the perspective of their own interest. And so you don't want a third party coming in. So that is India's firm position. So when Trump made the claim, clearly the Indian Prime Minister could not support that claim. So I think that introduced an element of friction in the relationship. Then if you recall, on June 17, Trump spoke to the Indian Prime Minister when the Prime Minister was in Canada. Trump had come back from the G7 and invited him to visit the White House the next day.
While Munir was in town.
Next day, Munir was invited to the White House. So obviously, Trump was trying to ambush the Indian Prime Minister with a photo op along with Pakistan Army Chief and say that he had brought them together. And of course, the Indian Prime Minister didn't accept that invitation to go there. So it adds to that. Now, the second element is that Trump has been trying to show that he's getting trade agreements where US has unilateral benefits and that he's not giving in anything. His partners are making unilateral concessions. For example, Indonesia and Vietnam opened up their markets, get 20% tariff. Japan opens up markets, promises $550 billion of investment. Trump says this is now US sovereign wealth fund. I will decide where the money goes, and 90% of the profits generated will go to the US Treasury. And then imposes 15% tariffs. Similarly, Europe promises $750 billion of energy purchase, $600 billion of investment, and you get 15% tariff. Now, in this period, and Rakesh mentioned that Indian Prime Minister was there in February, trade discussions started. And from all reports, by early July, we had a good draft of a trade agreement, balanced, benefits for both sides, ready. But when it goes up to Trump in July, and he's already irritated a bit, and he says, this is a balanced trade agreement, where is the unilateral benefit for me? So he doesn't accept it. 25% tariffs on India. Now, at that very stage, he's coming under criticism, heavily in the United States, that you have done nothing to resolve the Russia-Ukraine conflict. He had said he'll resolve it in 24 hours. And he has taken no action against Russia. Even till now, in his second term, there is no action against Russia that he has taken, for whatever reason, either because he wants to have continued access, continued dialogue, whatever it is. So when he came in for criticism, doesn't want to take actions against Russia, cannot take action against China, because China has shown countervailing power by doing export control on various items. Plus, when he raised tariffs to 100%, and Chinese raised tariffs, the bond market got destabilized. So he walked back from that. So you can't raise tariffs on China, can't do it, so hit India. So we get 25% more tariff, 50%. Then the final thing that's happening is that a lot of people in the US say that he does not have the authority to impose tariffs. It lies with the US Congress. And the matter has gone to courts. At two levels, courts have ruled that he doesn't have the authority. So he's now with the Supreme Court. In a filing in the Supreme Court, they have said that he has levied tariffs on India to resolve the Russia-Ukraine conflict. So he's trying to show that he's using tariffs for foreign policy purposes where he has a mandate. So this is the vortex of situation we found ourselves in, that at the moment, there is a certain advantage he sees in playing up the Pakistan relationship, including maybe to put pressure on us. And the India-US relationship is in a difficult phase. But I'm confident that given some of the convergences in our interest, we will come out of this situation.
There are always perils to summit-driven diplomacy. It isn't just between India and the US, it's everywhere. Even India and Pakistan, every time they attempted this kind of summit-driven, is it the rapport between two leaders? Trump is still calling Modi a great guy. Nobody stopped calling the Indian Prime Minister a great person. But he makes the phone call on Prime Minister Modi's birthday, and 2 days later, he comes up with the H-1B announcement. Now, there are two views on how much this is something we should expend capital on, because, it's for every country to determine their own work visa policies and so on. But when you consider the fact that 71% of beneficiaries of the H-1B last year were Indians, that's more than 200,000 people, 191,000 the year before that, and it happens a day after you're making this phone call and everybody's calling it a thaw, it seems as if there's a sort of certain degree of gaslighting going on where you don't know whether you're coming or going with Trump. I mean, sorry to borrow from modern lexicon of relationships, but that's what it seems like.
So I think first on personality-driven politics. Now, at one level, of course, one can argue that it always makes sense to prepare things substantively and work the decision-making up and look at the broader convergence between countries and their interests. That having been said, one can't rule out that there are moments then where the leadership level interaction and leadership decisions make a huge difference. If I just take a look at the Civil Nuclear Cooperation Agreement between India and the US, which worked out in 2008, and in fact, that is the agreement that has completely transformed today the India-US relationship. Because it was following that agreement that restrictions on technology transfers between India and US have gradually eased off. And it's because of that, for example, that we have now bought almost $25 billion worth of defense supplies from the US. You're talking about partnership in critical and emerging technologies. But that Civil Nuclear Cooperation Agreement would not have worked if the US President George Bush had not put his personal influence on that process. It was, in fact, he who asked his administration when he became president that I want to improve the relationship with India. You tell me how to do it. His administration did a deep dive analysis and said that if you want to improve the relationship with India, you must do a civil nuclear cooperation agreement with India to ease up cooperation in civil nuclear technologies, because only after that you can ease up other kinds of technology restrictions. And when that agreement was being negotiated and all of us followed those processes, it ran into repeated obstacles at functional level of government on both sides. In India, there was a worry that by doing this agreement, are we surrendering our sovereignty? Will we become a vassal state of the United States? In the US, the argument was by doing this agreement, completely changing international norms, bringing India out of nuclear isolation, going against all the non-proliferation philosophies that the US had articulated, is US compromising the entire non-proliferation process, and what is the benefit? And at each stage where it got stuck, it was George Bush and Prime Minister Manmohan Singh who stepped in to see it through. In fact, there was a no confidence motion in India, and the government in India had to survive that. So the role of leadership, one should not undermine. But it cannot be the only thing. Yeah. Trump, for example, tried to do a deal with North Korea, that he will do a leader-level engagement, or that I will talk to Putin and we'll get an agreement. If you see, he was caught on hot mic telling President Macron, can you imagine Trump is ready to do the agreement, Putin is ready to do the agreement because of me? No, he believes that. But, in certain cases doesn't work. But other levels, I think the leader-level engagement and decision-making is important. So it has to be a mix of the two. So I would say just let's keep that aspect in mind.
Okay. Optimism still? You didn't answer that.
So I would say we are going through a difficult phase.
Yeah.
We'll come out of it. And we'll come out of it because there is a certain convergence between India and the US. That, for example, why has Trump softened some of his messaging?
Yeah.
Because he's come under criticism in the United States.
Has he softened? It looked like he'd softened.
No, I softened the messaging. I'll come on the H-1B. So softened the messaging. He has not as yet removed the tariffs, but he softened the messaging. He's come under criticism. Now, I also don't rule out that he's going to do a deal with China.
Yeah.
If you see in the March speech that Javed spoke about, where he spoke about Pakistan, there's not a single reference to China, which is very unusual because he has still not figured out what is the policy he wants on China. And so he raised tariffs, brought it down. They're negotiating the export controls. He's now allowed TikTok to continue in the United States. So he wants to do a deal with China. Now, even if he does a deal with China, the essence of an economic, technological, and military competition between US and China is here to stay. Because US is not saying that I'll become number 2 in the world. They still want to be number 1. Whether they remain or not, we'll see. But they want to be number 1. Now, if they want to win this technology game with China, they will need India as a partner. You know, in India today, as everyone knows, we have 1,800 global capability centers doing also cutting-edge R&D and technology development work for global multinationals, including US companies. 20% of the global talent in semiconductor design is based in India. And just one more example before I stop. We don't have jet engine technology. One of the leading US companies on jet engines employs 8,000 people just in Bengaluru doing cutting-edge R&D and technology development work for jet engines.
So you're saying, and I want to take that to Ambassador Ashraf in a second, you're saying that even if his priority is no longer the sort of containment of China, he will continue to see China as a competitor.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, and just one on H1B.
Sure.
H1B is not a new thing. I think, Javed, when did you leave US? 2012-13? And so we were both there.
Yeah.
When H1B had become a hot political issue.
Yeah.
And at that time, they had raised the H1B fees 3 times. So it goes up and down because there is a perception in the US, whether it's justified or
That
not.
they're being misused.
They misuse, replace American workers. And one big example was that one Indian company had brought in 250 people hired by Disney. And Disney had used the Americans who were being replaced to train the Indians. So that's the kind of thing that keeps